I tried to clear a 7-meter jump, using rocket motors on the bike. And it didn't go exactly as planned. But how do I make sure this doesn't explode or flip me midair? And how many rocket motors does it actually take to clear a 7-meter jump? Let's find out. Also, don't try this. This video was done by professionals in controlled environment. Seriously, you will see why. My first idea was simple. Just mount the motors on the rear carrier. You know, the thing you use for groceries, not for jumping. So instead, I ended up with this. And please, before you laugh at me, let me explain. This thing has actually 3 parts. A holder under the seat, a battery, and an ignition switch. If you're really not sure about that, don't worry. I'm neither. Now let's 3D print it and install it on my bike. The fact that this thing is holding 3 rocket motors 15 centimeters from my ass is slowly starting to scare me. Anyway, let's test it. And because I really don't want to die on the first try, we are starting on flat ground. And as usual, it exploded. And not just the motor. The whole rear part under my seat was torn away. But at least that ugly motor holder is gone, isn't it? No, seriously now. Why does everything I make have to explode on the first try? Besides that, the motor had too much pressure. These motors actually have 3 extra nozzles for rotation, which is the last thing I want on the bike. So I just blocked those 3 side nozzles and drill out the main one. This worked on my rocket, so why shouldn't it work here? Well, these motors are the same, but an older version which had a pressure problem. Basically it means I can be glad it just kinda popped out and didn't create a black hole or whatever. Anyway, I just re-drilled the main nozzle to bigger diameter and now it should work. Or at least I thought. So I really wanted to try it without the motors a few times. And after a few attempts I was ready for 1 rocket motor. That was incredible. Even though it was pretty hard to press the ignition switch, it actually worked really well. I could really feel the boost, and that was only 1, so it made me ask a question. How do I know it won't add too much speed? Or even worse, completely flip me over? Well, I don't. But luckily Newton got hit by an apple, so we can calculate it. First, for just 1 motor. The total impulse of that motor is 14... 0.8 meters per second. Duration of burn is almost the same. About 0.4 meters per second. So basically 1 motor adds about 0.4 meters per second. 2 will add about 0.8 meters per second and 3 1.2. And another 1.2 meters per second is actually a lot when you are midair over a 7-meter jump. That is something that can result in overshooting the entire jump. But I'm sure it will all work itself out. To be really sure, I tested the most powerful setup with 3 motors on the flat road first. That went really well. Honestly, the boost from the motors was noticeable. However, I will just go slower and hopefully it will boost me exactly enough. Hopefully. So I felt a bit more confident trying 2 rocket motors. Let's test it. Yeah, it broke again. And this time the holder snapped into several pieces. But why? Well, since it couldn't explode anymore, it found another way to break. But to explain that, I had these 2 3D printed rods. I can snap the first one easily, but not the second one, even though they are the same material. The only difference is that the first was printed vertically and the second laying down. And that's exactly why it snapped, because those layer lines are the weakest point. Kinda like when you're standing, you're more likely to fall than when you're already laying down. but that probably won't pass you on an exam. Anyway, I completely reprinted it, but this time laying down and with more infill. Now, finally, we could try 2 and 3 rocket motors on a 7-meter jump. So after long mental preparation, it was time to fire it up. That was probably the best jump I've ever done, especially on this bike and 2 firing rocket motors behind me. First I thought I was going slow, but when the motors ignited, it gave me a huge boost. You can even see I slightly overshot the jump, which was pretty scary, but I landed it very well, which is exactly why I decided to try something even worse. At this point, everything already broke at least once, but I still had one more setup to try. 3 rocket motors. This is a bad idea. I didn't even make it to the jump, and at first it just looked like it broke, but when I slowed it down, it literally burned through my pants. The problem was the 3-printed holder. It snapped. Again. Despite that, I really didn't want to abandon this attempt, so I used the other one I had 3-printed as a spare before any of them broke. That was a huge mistake, because I 3-printed that spare back then vertically, and even though I now knew it could easily break, instead of printing another one, I just used what I had and tried to strengthen it with zip ties. This video was done by a professional, and even though they say zip ties are the solution for everything, I can confirm they aren't for 3 rocket motors. Though they are for 2 that worked. So 3 rocket motors failed, but the 1 and 2 worked perfectly. But yeah, lazy solutions don't often work, especially when you are trying to put 3 rocket motors on the bike. But I'm really happy that 1 and 2 rocket motors were absolutely firing. Literally. These shots look really cool, I think. If you enjoyed this video, you can check my other videos and consider subscribing. I also hope to see you in my future projects and ideas where I will definitely be more careful. Hopefully. If you're even more curious, there are links to 3 models and other documentation in the description. So yeah, zip ties fix a lot of things, but rocket motors aren't one of them. Hope you enjoyed it and see you next time.